Watari was a miserable bum who lost all his aura after getting dumped by his crush. However, everything changes when he accidentally rizzes up the most popular girl in school, making his ex so jealous she'll do anything to get him back. It all started with his childhood crush, Tachibana, with whom he used to hang out when they were young. One day, she suddenly destroyed his beloved garden and disappeared with no explanation, leaving Watari in shock. Years later, he and his sister were forced to move to Tokyo after their parents died, and in his new school, Watari was refusing to join any club because he had to take care of his little sister, so everyone found this weird and called him a siscon. One day, while Watari was sharing his family issues with his friend Tokui, his crush suddenly appeared, asking him to join the planning committee that day because they planned to build a flower bed. Watari loved to join, but he had to turn down the offer because of his little sister. However, Ishihara had no problem with this and told him to take his time. Bro started having butterflies in his stomach, but Tokui gave him the reality check when he said Watari's looks could only attract Baba Yaga. The following day at school, Tokui told Watari about a hot girl who had just transferred in, and when Watari heard the name Tachibana, he almost had a panic attack. Later that day, while Watari was about to return home, he heard a sinister voice calling his name behind him. Following that, the girl started to stalk him around the school, and he tried his best to ignore her until he couldn't take it any longer, so he asked what the heck she wanted from him. He told her he had not forgiven her since 6 years ago when she destroyed his garden. However, she replied that she wanted to talk to him about something, but Watari took to his heels immediately as if his life was in danger while she chased him hard. He managed to escape, and while he caught his breath, his sister Suzu told him she wanted a garden for her birthday. Watari thought her request was ridiculous because he didn't have a land and was too broke to afford one, but their scary aunt, Tamayo, appeared at that moment and offered them her yard. Later, they checked the yard and found it full of weeds, so they decided to clear it. Then Tachibana suddenly appeared out of nowhere, almost giving Watari a stroke. Watari tried to wade her off, but Tachibana dived at him, landing a perfect, unexpected kiss. Meanwhile, Ishihara was walking past at that moment, looking for Watari's house when she caught this steamy sight. When he woke up the next day, his aunt was angry with him for being cultured in her yard, and his little sister became jealous that he was seeing a girl other than her. Ishihara, too, couldn't believe what she saw and wondered if the two were dating. Some days later, Watari and Tachibana found themselves on the school roof, and she told him she wanted to return the hoe he had given her 6 years ago. Watari was shocked to find she still had it, and immediately had a flashback to when they used to be good friends, tending a garden, until one day when Tachibana suddenly destroyed it and disappeared. Watari asked her why she did that, but Tachibana only apologized without telling him why. Then she offered to show him her plot if that would resolve things, but Bro was too innocent and wouldn't look at a woman. Tachibana became disappointed with the idiot and left. After school, on his way home, he found Tachibana carrying Suzu as she had just napped her, so he immediately got into position ready to fight to protect his sister. But he calmed when Suzu revealed that Tachibana was only caring for her, and then she told him he was free to hang out with Tachibana however he liked, because she already liked her. On their way home, they suddenly met Ishihara, who asked Watari to help her shop. While shopping the next day, Ishihara nervously asked Watari if he and Tachibana are dating, only for Watari to abruptly deny it while almost confessing his love for her, but hesitating at the last moment. Later, out of the store, they meet Suzu and Tachibana, but Suzu eventually mistakes it for a date and gets jealous with his coward brother. Later in the garden, Tachibana teased him about his date, but when he tried to explain, things escalated between them to the point that it resulted in a position suitable for plot development. Unfortunately, Tamayo appeared at this moment, and before Bro could explain, she told him to pack and leave her house. Following this, Tachibana asked Watari if she should talk to her aunt on his behalf, but he told her not to worry about it, as this would only make things more complicated. Later, as Watari sulked over this, Tachibana shockingly mentioned that Tamayo might not hate them after all, like he thought, since she had offered her yard to be used for their gardening, meaning she didn't have an issue with living with them. Watari was shocked to realize this, and Tachibana gave him some seeds for the garden. She then told him that if he eventually decided to leave his aunt's home, her own house was open to him and his sister. Watari returned home to plead with Tamayo, telling her how staying with her has made him and his sister live a normal, happy life. Hearing this, Tamayo told him to take the gardening more seriously, indirectly meaning that he and his sister could continue staying. The next day, Watari got to school, only to realize that their midterms were in a few days. Ishihara asked to study together, but Bro quickly dropped a disclaimer that he wasn't that smart and might drag her to the bottom with him. However, she told him to give it some thought and leave. Even though Watari wanted to take this offer, he thought that his jealous little sister would be against it. Later, after school, as Watari prepared to go home, it was raining, so Tachibana offered him her umbrella, saying she had an extra one. He took this and went home, but he didn't find his sister, so he thought the rain must have stopped her. As he searched for her raincoat to go pick her up, he was shocked to find her math test result hidden in the cupboard. He was even more shocked when he realized that she had gotten a perfect score, which meant his sister was not as dumb as he thought. She deliberately got low scores on some tests so she could spend more time with him by getting him to tutor her. Suddenly, Suzu appeared, and Watari quickly hid the test. She told him she was late because she had seen a scared sissy off to his home, but instead of commending her, Watari grew sad and left. On his way, he considered how everything he had done had revolved around making his little sister happy, and while he thought about this, he suddenly saw Tachibana in the rain without an umbrella. He was shocked because she had told him she had an extra, and while she tried to run, he grabbed her and confessed that he was not happy with the fact that everyone was lying to him. He covered her with his coat and walked her home, but before he could leave, Tachibana got frisky and pulled him inside with her. But Bro told her Suzu was home alone. Tachibana replied that Suzu could take care of herself and that he needed to prioritize his feelings sometimes, but Watari got triggered and left, telling her Tachibana she knew nothing about them. However, after he left, Tachibana confessed that she knew them because she had been following him for the past 6 years. On his way back, Watari thought about what Tachibana said and wondered what prioritizing his own feelings before Suzu would mean. He soon returned to Suzu and asked her what she thought about him having a group study with Ishihara on Sunday, but Suzu got jealous, saying he had promised to tutor her first. Just then, he brought out the test result and told her she would be fine without him. However, Suzu said she couldn't do anything without him, and as Watari tried to respond, his eyes suddenly went hazy, and he collapsed. The next day, Tachibana discovered Watari was sick and decided to visit him. While she teased him as usual, Ishihara suddenly rang the doorbell, shocking him. She offered to cook for him, and while she did, he started to panic, wondering what to do about Tachibana, who was inside his room. In quick thinking, he hid Tachibana under his blanket while he lay down, hoping Ishihara wouldn't notice. Meanwhile, Tachibana had now turned red from the risky position she was in. Watari started sweating bullets that made Ishihara wonder if he was running a fever. She noticed a pack of drugs, and Watari nervously revealed that Tachibana brought it, surprising her that Tachibana had also been there. Meanwhile, Tachibana was really enjoying the squeeze and was about finishing as she pulled Watari closer, making him more nervous. A few moments later, Ishihara left, and Watari immediately separated from Tachibana, blaming her for almost making him peak. As Ishihara went home, she couldn't stop thinking about Tachibana visiting Watari before her, and she started to get jealous, but she tried brushing it off by saying we're just childhood friends. Later that day, Suzu met Tachibana working on their new garden, and suddenly asked her about what had happened 6 years ago. That day, Tachibana had destroyed all the crops unprovoked, and while Suzu ran after her, she noticed she had been sent by a dude. Back to the present, Suzu asked her who that dude was, but Tachibana denied being with any dude that day. She then asked whether she had told Watari about this, but Suzu replied no, and Tachibana told her she was only remembering things wrongly because she was very young then. The next day, Watari met Ishihara at school and thanked her for the meal she had made for him the previous day. She then asked if they could do a little group study together, shocking him. In the study room, he wondered why she was being nice to a loser like him, of all people, and she replied that he was a transfer student and not like other boys. She added that she had also met him once before he transferred to the school when he suddenly barged in on her while she was dressing. This embarrassed him immediately, but she told him not to worry about it and started saying all the good things about him. She almost confessed her feelings for him, but she got shy and excused herself immediately, leaving him wondering what the heck just happened. However, because Bro thought he was too ugly to be liked by such a hottie, he thought this was just her way of saying she saw him like a brother. He considered maintaining all the good standards for which he was known, but his cultured mind betrayed him that night, as all he could think about was her watermelons and cakes. Meanwhile, Ishihara remembered almost confessing earlier that day, and thought that she needed to become braver so she could one day open up her mind and maybe her legs to him. Watari appeared looking like he had seen the Grim Reaper the next morning, as he couldn't sleep all night because he was trying to keep his mind from being naughty. This continued till he got to school and couldn't keep his eyes off Tachibana's Cardi B thighs, which made Ishihara wonder if he liked them thick or something. Just then, Wind-kun suddenly blew, lifting everyone's skirts, and Watari quickly ran to grab Tachibana to prevent her skirt from rising. However, this came as awkward, and Ishihara ran off in disbelief. From then on, things quickly grew awkward between Watari and Ishihara as rumors spread around the school that he and Tachibana were clapping. Watari felt really sad that he had completely fumbled his chances with Ishihara. A few days later, the class announced a beach trip, and Watari's first instinct was to panic about leaving Suzu alone. But the Lords of Luck pulled up for him, because Suzu casually revealed that her own class had a picnic lined up for the same day. He told her they should both go enjoy themselves with their friends, but this girl burst into tears and begged him not to forget her while she was gone, and then immediately followed it up by asking him to help her pick a swimsuit. The next day, Tachibana offered to roll with Watari to the mall, and Ishihara, who happened to overhear this, immediately started catching feelings she didn't know what to do with. Tokui, being the real one he is, told her to just go with them, but she refused, not wanting to be the third wheel. He then told her not to believe in rumors until Watari addressed them himself, and that was apparently all the push she needed, because she went sprinting after him. When she got there though, instead of walking up like a normal person, Ishihara switched to full stalker mode and lurked in the shadows watching Tachibana parade her hot swimsuit in front of Watari. This lit a fire under Ishihara, and she decided she needed to be a total snack too. She tried on practically every swimsuit in the store, only to run into the classic problem of being too blessed up top to find anything that cooperated. Meanwhile, Watari managed to walk in on Tachibana mid-change and caught her with absolutely nothing on, which did not go well for him. She stormed off, he panicked, and grabbed her hand to apologize, and she responded by calling him a degenerate. Ishihara, who witnessed the hand-holding from a distance, immediately assumed the rumors were confirmed. Watari, on the other hand, was too busy wondering why his heart was suddenly doing gymnastics to notice any of this. On the way home, they ran into Ishihara, who had zero shame and asked point-blank whether Watari and Tachibana were actually a thing, since she had once caught them kissing in his yard. Bro completely froze and couldn't get a single word out. Tachibana, unbothered as always, took matters into her own hands and kissed Ishihara on the cheek, explaining that kissing people was nothing serious to her. Watari nearly short-circuited trying to figure out what that meant, while Ishihara, now fully satisfied that nothing was going on, skipped home, a happy woman. On the day of the beach trip, Ishihara showed up and instantly collected a crowd of beta males, while Tachibana was already in the middle of aggressively confronting every guy who dared approach her. Watari, recognizing that this was about to become a whole situation, grabbed her and got them both out of there. He later told her to call for backup instead of going full lone warrior mode, but this airhead responded by striking a pose in her swimsuit and asking if she looked hot. She then casually dropped that she had never actually been to a beach before in her life, which genuinely caught Watari off guard and made him realize how little he actually knew about her. He offered to teach her to swim, but before anything could happen, Tokui appeared out of nowhere and volunteered Watari and Ishihara for a grocery run for the class. However, on their way, Watari figured out pretty quickly that they had been played, and he asked Ishihara if she wanted to grab some street food on the way. They sat down with their skewers, and the people around them could not stop murmuring about what someone who looked like Watari was doing next to someone who looked like Ishihara. He panicked, grabbed her hand, and started heading back to the beach, leaving Ishihara blushing behind him. Somewhere along the way, he nervously told her she looked cute in her outfit, especially with those popping melons. She thanked him, and for a moment, things were almost normal. Then some rich, confident guy named Fujioka rolled up, told Ishihara he was glad to see her doing well, and the entire vibe shifted. Ishihara got visibly unsettled, and without a word to Watari, she turned around and walked back to the beach alone. Back on the beach, Tokui pulled Tachibana aside and asked her straight up whether she liked Watari. She told him that as far as she was concerned, he was the only one for her, but that she had no intention of dating him. Just then, Tokui wondered why Watari and Ishihara were taking so long to return. Later, Watari finds out from his classmates that Ishihara and Fujioka used to date 3 years ago, and Bro immediately started calculating how a man of his caliber was supposed to compete with an actual Giga Chad. Meanwhile, Fujioka linked up with Ishihara and told her he wanted to start fresh. She tried to let him down easy, saying she appreciated his kindness but didn't see him that way. But this guy cut her off mid-sentence and told her to think about it, then walked away like the answer was already yes. Later, while Watari walked past with his boys, the girls caught one of them saying he was going to shoot his shot at Tachibana since she looked an easy pass who would allow him clap. Watari immediately shut that down and told the dude she wasn't like that. Tachibana felt that one in her chest. Ishihara clocked it too and was determined to go air her feelings too, but before going to handle her own business, she told Tachibana that she had never actually dated anyone, Fujioka included, unlike the rumors. Tachibana wasted no time and went to correct the record in front of all the girls who had been fueling the rumors, and Watari happened to overhear it all. Meanwhile, Ishihara sat across from Fujioka at some fancy restaurant, and as she looked at him, the memories started flooding back how he was the one who started the dating rumors in the first place and then pressured her into playing along. And when she had finally worked up the nerve to push back, this man looked her dead in the eye and said he wasn't giving up. Back in the present, Fujioka hit her with the "I'm still in love with you," and Ishihara told him there was already someone else in her heart, then got up and left without another word. Shortly after, Tokui found Watari and told him Ishihara was out there alone, basically giving him the nudge he clearly needed. When Watari finally tracked her down, she told him to go back, but he wasn't having it, saying he couldn't just leave when she sounded like that. Ishihara tried to make a run for it, then immediately fumbled by snapping her sandal and nearly eating the floor. She suddenly began to cry as she went off about how lame and spineless she was, and admitted she never dated Fujioka but never corrected anyone because she was too much of a coward to speak up. She told Watari she wanted to be more headstrong like him, and naturally that was the exact moment Fujioka rolled up with his entourage of fangirls and asked Ishihara to come back to the hotel with him. She ducked behind Watari, who told Fujioka to his face to stop spreading lies. Fujioka, unbothered, insisted they had dated and turned to Ishihara to back him up, expecting her to fold like she always had. But Ishihara looked him in the eye and told him she had never liked him and would be very grateful if he could simply disappear. Fujioka grabbed her arm and told her to watch herself, but before Watari could even react, Tachibana came out of nowhere and dropped Fujioka from behind with a kick, calling him a scumbag to his face. He got up talking about how unladylike she was, but Tachibana told him she'd call the police, and suddenly this dude remembered he had somewhere else to be. Later at the hotel, Ishihara thanked Tachibana for stepping in, but Tachibana quickly clarified that she only did it to keep Watari out of trouble. Ishihara, unbothered by the excuse, told her she was planning to confess to Watari after the trip, and Tachibana told her that was none of her business and that she could do whatever she wanted. Following that, Watari caught up with Tachibana outside and handed her some convenience store rice balls, telling her to eat something. She looked at him and asked why he was being this sweet when it was obvious he was into Ishihara, but he had no answer. Then she kissed him and told him to stop leading her on, because if he kept it up, she might end up destroying something important to him again, just like she did 6 years ago. The next day, Bro couldn't stop overthinking everything Tachibana had said, and suddenly his brain pulled up a buried memory. 6 years ago, the two of them watched some rom-com and thought it was a great idea to run away together. Naturally, once the sun started going down, they had zero sense of direction and had to drag themselves back home like defeated soldiers. He tried to remember what kind of face she had made back then, but Suzu burst through the door, returning from her school trip. The following morning, Watari planted himself outside Tachibana's house like a security guard and, the moment she stepped out, asked her why she hadn't shown up to water their plants. Tachibana looked at him like he had lost his mind and pointed out that he should be asking why she kissed him instead. She then asked if he had felt anything when she did it. Bro turned red and admitted he did, but Tachibana hit him with the logic that he supposedly hated her, so that made no sense. That was apparently enough to finally break the seal, because Watari blurted out that his problem was never the garden she destroyed. It was that she disappeared and he couldn't see her anymore. Tachibana's eyes went wide and she asked if he still had feelings for her, but he said no, and she told him she never wanted to see his ugly mug again. At school, Ishihara spent most of the day gearing herself up to confess, only to bottle it every single time and spiral into depression after each failed attempt. Meanwhile, Watari noticed Tachibana had walked in with Tokui and immediately found that suspicious. Later, he headed to the boys' changing room, swung open the door, and found Ishihara standing there shirtless. He shut the door faster than his brain could process what his eyes had just seen. Ishihara, operating on pure delusion, assumed this was him making a romantic move, but Bro quickly clarified that she was simply in the wrong changing room, and she sank to her knees like her soul had left her body. He accidentally caught a glimpse of her chest and spun around out of respect, which she apparently took as the perfect window to finally get the confession off her chest. But right before the words fully left her mouth, the door swung open and sent Watari crashing on top of her. The moment she realized where his hand had landed, she scrambled up and fled the scene. Later that evening, Ishihara finally tracked him down on his way out, looked him dead in the eyes, told him she wanted to go out with him, then immediately told him to think about it and ran away before he could even open his mouth. Watari got home still looking like he had just witnessed something that couldn't be unseen. And Suzu, completely unbothered by his state, told him to stop moping and go fix things with Tachibana. He dragged himself over to her house, found the door open, and realized she wasn't home. After checking around, he spotted her calendar and figured out she was at her part-time job. He tracked her down and found her outside in a Chinese outfit, handing out flyers and looking thoroughly unimpressed to see him. Once she clocked off, she asked him point-blank why he was there after she had specifically told him to lose her number. He said he was worried about her because she was his childhood friend. The words sent butterflies through her stomach, and she asked if she could stick around under the cover of being just his friend, and Watari nodded. He then awkwardly informed her that he could see straight up her cookies from where he was standing, but the naughty girl only raised the skirt even higher and told him he was more than welcome to look, turning him red. The next morning, Bro somehow grew a spine and told Ishihara that while her confession had him feeling all kinds of ways, a certified loser like him had no business dating someone out of his league. But Ishihara told him she wanted him specifically, even suggesting a trial run for a few months. Later, while he related his issues to Tokui at some restaurant, going on about how terrified he was of eventually disappointing her, Tokui, in his infinite wisdom, told him to stop overthinking and just focus on his feelings. He then went ahead and volunteered to be his personal love coach, which made Watari wonder what kind of dude he was to have accumulated so much experience with women. Just then, Tachibana appeared in a Chinese outfit, and Watari dropped that he was actually there for a job interview, only for Tachibana to lean against him and casually reveal it was her last day at the place since she had already secured a better-paying gig somewhere else. Watari soon got called in, and as he walked into the waiting room, he found some cute girl knocked out asleep in one of the chairs. Something about her face felt familiar, so he leaned in for a closer look and she immediately woke up and accused him of trying to kiss her. Perfect timing, because the manager walked in right at that moment.
Why are you crying?
As Watari scrambled to explain himself like a man on trial, the girl grabbed his resume, took one look at it, only to discover his name was familiar. That night, on his way home, Ishihara ambushed him on the street and asked him out on a date, and when the day finally came, Bro showed up with his little sister like a creep. The three of them hit the zoo, completely unaware that Tokui and Tachibana were lurking in the shadows behind them, under the very noble excuse of making sure Watari didn't fumble. Later, as Watari and Suzu went to town on the lunchbox Ishihara had made with her mother, Tokui quietly noticed that Tachibana kept stealing glances at the happy families scattered around them, but he didn't say anything. Things were just starting to heat up between Watari and Ishihara when Suzu woke up from her nap and announced she needed the toilet. On her way back, she walked straight into Tokui and Tachibana's little surveillance operation and blew their cover wide open. Watari immediately started berating them for creeping Ishihara out, but Tachibana smoothly offered to take Suzu for ice cream, and Tokui told him to go enjoy his time with his girlfriend. With Suzu successfully extracted, Watari finally held Ishihara's hand, and that night he swore on his life he was never washing it again. Ishihara, for her part, was not as settled. The whole day, she couldn't shake the jealousy gnawing at her every time Tachibana came to mind. She decided she needed to lock him down before someone else did. So the next day, she walked into the convenience store and grabbed some protection. The next day at school, Ishihara was already trying to block Tachibana from getting near Watari when Karma decided to return the favor and get in her way too. Some guys pulled Watari aside to tell him a cute girl was downstairs looking for him. He peeked out the window and immediately recognized the girl from his job interview. One of the guys filled him in that her name was Umezawa, and that's when it clicked that she was his junior from his old school. He headed down to meet her, and she explained that they had both been hired at the Chinese restaurant, but the boss couldn't get through to him because bro was out here in this day and age without a cell phone. Before he could even respond, she grabbed him by the arm and declared that they were going phone shopping, dragging him off like he had no say in the matter. Meanwhile, Ishihara was upstairs fuming, but she quickly convinced herself into trusting him. Later, while they were out, Umezawa asked Watari point blank if he had tried to kiss her because she looked way yummy since they last met, but shut that down and told her he was just trying to get a better look at her face. Once they sorted out the phone situation, the little menace immediately insisted that his very first call had to be to her. But like the faithful boyfriend he was, bro called Ishihara first, which irritated Umezawa, so she demanded to know who he had just called, and Watari revealed it was his girlfriend. That night, Umezawa returned to her dorm, wondering how an absolute loser like Watari had managed to land a girlfriend. Then something switched in her head. She sat up, and just like that, she decided she was going to blow up their relationship and make Watari simp for her. The following day at work, Umezawa pulled out every trick she had with her miniature personalities, trying to get Watari to notice her. But bro treated her like an unlocked character, frustrating her so much that she got the most performing employee on her first day. Later, as she was getting out of her work uniform, Tachibana showed up to grab some of her things and casually informed Umezawa that her melons were too flat for Watari's taste. Angry Umezawa stormed over to Watari and demanded he dump his creepy girlfriend immediately. The moment he realized she was talking about Tachibana, something else caught his attention as he remembered she had mentioned a new high-paying job, and that had him worried because that seemed very sus. The trail led him straight into a red light district, and bro started wondering if Tachibana had resorted to some hoe hustle. But the area was too large to check shop by shop, so he waited until nightfall and went straight to her place. Once he was inside, he told Tachibana that if she was being pressured into some sketchy job because of money or family drama, she could rely on him, even though he was nothing short of a brokey himself. She smiled and said she'd tell him everything, but only if he told her about his first day at work first. Watari started complaining about how long he had been on his feet, and before he could finish, Tachibana had already grabbed his foot and volunteered herself as his personal masseuse. He got flustered and told her he was fine, but she was already working her magic and slowly creeping toward his thigh. At that point, Watari mumbled that he was currently in a relationship with Ishihara, but that didn't stop her as she brought her face closer to his with her hands aiming for his magnum. However, his phone suddenly rang, and Tachibana pulled back, laughed, and said she was just messing with him, before revealing that she had simply been working as a waitress at a steakhouse. Watari exhaled like a man who had just escaped death, and she reassured him that she wasn't broke or on bad terms with her family, so he could relax. A few days later, Umezawa came to Watari and asked him to be her fake boyfriend at the upcoming fireworks festival, but he graciously turned her down. Then he made plans with Suzu and locked in a time and spot to link up with Ishihara at the festival. On the day itself, Tokue hit him with the news that Umezawa had gone ghost on him, so Watari went on a whole search mission. He eventually tracked her down near the shrine and asked why she was on her brat behavior again. Umezawa came at him with the audacity, saying he had not warned her about how fine Tokue was, unlike him. She said she would have shot her shot, but Tokue was operating on a level her heart could not process. While bro was still recovering from the verbal beatdown, some idiots rolled up on Umezawa and started asking her to keep them company. Watari grabbed her and they bounced, but this only gave Umezawa more ammo as she went off about what a coward he was for not squaring up and just dragging her into a full sprint. Instead, she also clocked in her head that his mystery girlfriend must be some dusty village girl, because there was no way a man of his caliber was pulling anything remotely batty. Then Ishihara walked up to their meeting spot near the shrine, and Umezawa's whole worldview shattered the moment she saw that face card. She took off running and realized it seemed she had caught feelings for this loser. Meanwhile, on the train back, Ishihara casually dropped that she had dipped from the festival early just to spend more time with him. But of course, the universe had other plans because on the walk back from the station, the rain came down like it had a personal vendetta. Watari took Ishihara to his place since it was the closest option, only to find Tachibana already outside his gate, soaking wet like she had lost an argument with a waterfall. He asked what she was doing there, and she said she had come to tend to Suzu's plants. As she turned to leave, Watari told her she was not going anywhere in this weather and to stay the night. Later that night, with both girls knocked out in the spare room right next door, Ishihara quietly slipped out and crept into Watari's room. She settled right next to him and leaned in for the kill, only for him to wake up mid-attempt, grab her, and pin her against the door. That caught her completely off guard and somehow made her even more desperate. She told him to go ahead and do it, however, the innocent moron assumed she meant kissing. But then Ishihara lay down on the floor and told him to do some Johnny Sins push-ups on her. And that was the moment it finally clicked for him. So bro laced his fingers through hers and prepared to start the workout until the pure, respectable image he had been carefully maintaining in front of Ishihara flashed before his eyes. He pulled back immediately and told her they needed to slow down, instantly pissing her off. She bounced out of his room while he regretted fumbling the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity of cracking her. The next morning, Ishihara dips before Watari opens his eyes, so he offers to walk Tachibana to her workplace instead. On the way, he asks if Ishihara said anything to her the night before, and Tachibana tells him she's actually proud of him for keeping it together given the atmosphere. She also drags him for his trash communication skills and tells him to fix that if he actually wants to keep things going with Ishihara, leaving bro wishing the ground could swallow him whole. Later, he texts Ishihara saying they need to talk after her cram school, and this immediately sends her into a spiral, convincing herself he's about to dump her for throwing herself at him the night before. Meanwhile, Watari's boss slides him 2 pairs of movie tickets, so he rounds up Umezawa, Suzu, and her friend for a little outing. That evening, while Ishihara was blowing up his phone trying to get a word in, this dead-brained virgin knocked out cold on Umezawa's shoulder right there in the theater. He eventually follows up with Ishihara to meet in person, and they lock in a time for the next day. Ishihara, on her end, is deep in her feelings about Tachibana, fully convinced she can't compete with a childhood friend who's been in his corner for years. Come the day of their meetup, Watari has 2 hours to spare between his shift and their date, and his plan was apparently to wander the streets like a guy with nowhere to be. Umezawa wasn't having that and dragged him on a full shopping spree instead. After hours of serving as her unpaid personal assistant, bro finally got to eat when she took him to a steakhouse, only to find Tachibana there in a waitress uniform. Of course. While Tachibana got to work teasing him about renting him out for a day, Umezawa was busy having a crisis over her flat chest. She later unloaded on him about how guys always chase after girls who have more personalities. Bro, trying to be a decent human being, told her flat chest had its place so she had zero reason to be insecure. Then this girl turned around, sat on his lap and asked him to massage her melons from behind because she heard it could help them grow. Watari shockingly said he wasn't going to hold back, which caught her so off guard she fumbled straight to the floor. As he helped her up, he apologized for the tease and came clean that he was actively trying to keep his degenerate brain in check because he had a whole perfect guy image to maintain in front of Ishihara. He also dropped the bomb that he was in love with Ishihara, which did not land well with Umezawa at all, and she ran out feeling heartbroken. Then bro turned around and found Ishihara standing right there, who let him know she had heard every word. While he stood there short-circuiting, she smiled and asked him to say it again, and just like that, they were back on good terms. Later that night, as Umezawa got back to her dorm after her evening run, she found Watari at the gate holding all her bags. He handed them over, said nothing unnecessary, and left. And she stood there and started crying, because there is nothing more dangerous to a woman's heart than a decent gentleman. The next day, as Watari headed to school for summer lessons, bro was practically floating on cloud 9, thinking about his relationship with Ishihara, until Tachibana materialized behind him like a jump scare and nearly sent his soul out of his body. He asked why she's out here in a swimsuit, and she explained she needs swimming lessons, or her extracurricular grades were going to be cooked. She then started ranting about how she could only survive underwater for 20 seconds before tapping out, and wondered if a younger Watari would have taught her how to swim back when they were 6. That's when he revealed he and Ishihara are officially together now, so he couldn't be giving Tachibana his usual attention anymore. Her swimming coach called her back before she could respond properly, so she left him, saying that he didn't need to worry about her because her feelings for him weren't changing, but if he ever needed a side chick to lean on, she'd be right there. Then Ishihara walked up, after realizing that he'd been talking to Tachibana, and her insecurities immediately started warming up in the background. To shake it off, she invited him over to her place. When he got there, her mom, Mio, welcomed him with a warm smile and thanked him for being such a good friend to her daughter. Later, as Mio stepped out to pick up Ishihara's little brother from swimming school, Ishihara pulled Watari into her room and announced she was ready to waste some cream with him. She even revealed she had come fully prepared with protection. Watari, however, immediately folded as he couldn't bring himself to disrespect Mio's house like that, so he told her it was still too early. But this girl was not hearing any of it. She hugged him and then had the audacity to present her assets as a closing argument. Watari's inner degenerate, who had been trying his best to behave, took one look at those melons and immediately switched sides. But as they leaned in for a kiss, Mio walked in. Even though they weren't in any compromising position by that point, Mio could tell something was about to go down before she came. As Ishihara slipped out to make tea, Watari accidentally sent the pack of protection flying across the floor. Mio saw it. He panicked, snatched it up, and started making his exit, only for Mio to stop him with one quiet reminder that her daughter was still very young. On his way home, the summer heat took him out completely, and Bro collapsed by the roadside like an NPC that had wandered too far from the map. In his dream, Tachibana showed up looking like she already knew everything that had gone down at Ishihara's. She brought up how his parents had him at the same age he was now and told him Ishihara was moving too fast. Then, in true Tachibana fashion, she suggested that instead of going down that road with Ishihara, he should come practice it on her instead. She kissed him, and just then, he woke up. Tachibana was standing right next to him in real life, having apparently found his unconscious self on the side of the road and dragged him to safety. Later, as they walked to the supermarket, Watari dropped the bombshell that despite everything, he still didn't want to break up with Ishihara. Tachibana immediately called him emotionally unstable, but before she could roast him further, Mio pulled up like a villain with perfect timing and told him to get in the car. Tachibana, refusing to leave him alone with a scary woman, hopped in too. At the convenience store, Watari tried to fall on the sword and take the blame, but Mio waved him off and told him straight that she knew her daughter was the one who was frisky. She then told him they could stay friends, but he needed to break up with Ishihara because they were both too young to keep their urges on a leash, except Bro didn't take it well at all. From that day on, Watari became a man possessed. He swore on everything that he was not breaking up with Ishihara, dropped out of summer lessons, started cooking up plans to go independent right after graduation, and began asking Ishihara out every single day like a man running out of time. His big brain logic was that if they stayed in public, no plots would develop, which would also keep Mio off his back. On one of these dates, Ishihara sat next to him, helping him with English, and she was sticking so close that Bro was already turning red. Then, as if God himself decided to test him, he noticed that her extra-large melons had made a jailbreak from her button-up shirt. He stared at the ceiling and considered his life choices before mentioning it to her, which made Ishihara embarrassed and evacuate the premises immediately. Watari was forced to admit that keeping things clean was significantly harder than he had originally budgeted for. That night, after Ishihara stepped out of her nighttime shower, she got a message from Watari saying he couldn't see her for a few days because Umezawa had hurt her foot. Following that, Watari paid Umezawa a visit in her dorm room, and she wasted no time asking if his heart was racing from being alone with a fine girl like her. Bro hit back with the fact that she was just a tiny, flat-chested little gremlin who needed to relax. Later, he took her out on a walk, and that's when Umezawa casually dropped that she wasn't really thinking about going pro anymore. She was more interested in becoming a housewife. Watari reminded her she was still too young to be having those thoughts, but she fired back saying people her age were perfectly allowed to think about marriage, and then turned it around on him, asking if he ever thought about tying the knot with his girlfriend. Watari said that hadn't crossed his mind, which made her question what exactly he was even doing in that relationship then. He explained it came down to his deep-rooted inferiority complex, as he felt like Ishihara deserved someone way better than him. Umezawa wasn't having it, and told him straight that if he was letting groundless doubts like those get in the way, then he probably didn't love her as much as he thought. She tried to storm off dramatically after that, but her foot betrayed her, and Watari ended up carrying her back to her room. The following day, he linked up with Ishihara at the library, and she grabbed his hands and asked if she could come over tonight for a steamy workout session. When Watari brought up how that would put her at odds with her mother, she pressed her melons against him and revealed she wasn't on speaking terms with her mother anyway, so that wasn't really a concern. Bro apologized for being the reason her family situation was strained and asked her to try seeing things from Mio's perspective, but she was already walking away. On her way out, though, she overheard Tachibana's swimming coach pleading with her not to switch schools so abruptly. Turned out Tachibana was heading back to her parents' place that very day, which meant changing schools too, and Ishihara immediately started wondering whether Watari knew. Tachibana said it was none of his business, but after Ishihara reminded her that she was in love with him, Tachibana just smiled, gave her the name and time of her ride, and left the decision entirely in Ishihara's hands. Meanwhile, Watari sat down with Mio and walked her through his parents' entire sob story, how watching their early marriage fall apart firsthand made him swear he'd never put himself and Ishihara in that same position. Mio gave him her blessing to keep dating Ishihara on the strict condition that things didn't lead to any family expansion. The moment Mio left, Ishihara called him and filled him in on Tachibana's situation, that she was leaving the city that very day. Watari initially brushed it off, saying this wasn't exactly the first time she had pulled a disappearing act on him, but the second Ishihara told him when the train was leaving, Bro was already sprinting to the station. Ishihara, meanwhile, sat back and admitted to herself that this whole thing was partly a test. She wanted to see just how loyal Watari really was, and whether Tachibana had finally woken up to her own feelings for him. Back at the station, Watari tracked her down and immediately went in on her, demanding to know how she could just up and vanish on him again without a single word, and telling her to get off the train and talk to him like a normal person. Tachibana grabbed him and pulled him onto the train with her. On the ride, he went at it again, telling her he was tired of her constantly leaving like this, and she shot back, asking if Ishihara had sent him. Watari denied it flat out and said he came because he wanted to. When they finally rolled into her hometown and Tachibana tried to send him back, he wasn't budging. He told her he was coming to meet her parents whether she liked it or not. She eventually caved and brought him to her family home. They snuck in through the back door like a pair of criminals, only to immediately get jump-scared by an employee named Yayoi, who recognized Watari as the legendary first love of Tachibana. Bro hadn't even caught his breath yet, and Yayoi had already drafted 3 chapters of Wattpad fanfic in her head, before Watari had to physically snap her out of her delusion and remind her that absolutely nothing was going on between them. Meanwhile, Tachibana excused herself to go see her parents, leaving Yayoi to drop a full lore dump on the unsuspecting guy. She revealed that Tachibana's grandmother had passed away a year ago, that her parents had been pushing her to inherit the inn, and that Tachibana had said no to all of it and gone chasing after Watari instead. She also casually threw in that Tachibana had been adopted 6 years ago, which probably explained why she wanted nothing to do with the inn, or anything connected to it. Back at Watari's house, Suzu was busy digging through her own memories, recalling a mysterious figure she had spotted approaching Tachibana 6 years ago, and wondering who this man could possibly be. As it turned out, this mysterious figure was a blonde idiot named Naozumi, Tachibana's adoptive brother. That night, Yayoi mixed up a strong herbal drink to recharge the duo after their long day. However, she fumbled the recipe so badly that the drink hit them like a tranquilizer dart, knocking both of them out cold. The next morning, Watari woke up all up in Tachibana's business and immediately evacuated the room at full speed, desperate to escape any degenerate allegations before they could even form. Tachibana, on the other hand, was being forced into a white dress against her will and dragged out with Watari to visit a nearby shrine. Despite Watari's best efforts to lighten the mood, Tachibana spent the entire outing behaving like a prisoner on death row, quietly making peace with her fate. Mid-date, Watari stumbled into Yayoi again and proceeded to obliterate her fanfiction dreams by casually mentioning that he already had a girlfriend. Right on cue, Tachibana returned from the bathroom and confessed to Watari that she was absolutely pissing her pants over the thought of meeting her parents, since they were going to corner her about taking over the inn. Watari, in a rare moment of big brain thinking, suggested they pretend to be a couple so Tachibana would have a clean excuse to return to Tokyo. She put on a whole performance of being outraged by such a ridiculous suggestion, but this was precisely the plan she had been hoping he would propose the entire time. When the moment of the grand confrontation finally arrived, Watari delivered his fake boyfriend performance, only to be completely caught off guard when Tachibana's scary-looking parents turned out to be absolutely thrilled about the whole situation. He had prepared himself for war and walked into a celebration instead. They went on to explain that they had adopted Tachibana because her birth mother couldn't support her financially, and that their long-term plan had been to make her heir to the inn by marrying her off to Naozumi. However, Naozumi had taken one look at this arrangement, decided he wanted no part of it, and fled from his unhinged parents entirely. Later, as Watari and Tachibana made their way back, Naozumi pulled her aside and cut straight to the point, telling her plainly that he knew she was in love with Watari. It was the first time anyone had forced her to actually sit with that truth, and as much as she might have wanted to argue, she realized her annoying stepbrother was completely right. Back at Ishihara's crib, she pulled out her phone and started taking selfies with her assets front and center so Watari could have some exclusive gooning resources. Unfortunately, her little brother Sho barged in at that moment, catching her mid-shoot and wondering aloud why she had suddenly switched to strings. Meanwhile, Tachibana was at the pool getting swimming lessons from her coach, but her body was there while her brain was somewhere drowning in her complicated feelings for Watari. Later that day, Watari took Ishihara out on a proper date, and even got her a lover's charm from the shrine, which had her so overwhelmed she immediately grabbed his boss to snap a photo of them together. Meanwhile, Umezawa was lurking nearby from a restaurant, watching the whole thing unfold and barely holding herself together. But before the date could get any more wholesome, Tachibana appeared out of nowhere and confessed her undying love right there on the spot, asking Watari point-blank how he really felt about her. Ishihara could not believe the audacity of this woman, so she pulled Tachibana aside for a private word, terrified that if Watari had even 30 more seconds to think, he might actually catch feelings back. She straight up begged Tachibana to stop ruining her last chance at getting clapped by Watari, but Tachibana told her to stay out of it. Later that day, Tachibana crept up and hugged Watari from behind while he was busy being depressed about Ishihara, then casually reminded him that he had promised her private swimming lessons. Bro tried to do the honorable thing and stay loyal, but the moment Tachibana unveiled her spicy swimsuit, his degenerate brain staged a full coup. Still, he managed to hold it together long enough to tell her he couldn't reciprocate her feelings because of his relationship. Tachibana took this so personally that she tried to drown herself. Watari rescued her, but Sho happened to walk by at that exact moment and witnessed the whole thing. He ran home and snitched immediately, and Ishihara, already at her limit, made up her mind to have a very serious conversation with her man. When the day finally came, Watari walked in, thinking his girlfriend just looked really good today, completely unaware that he was walking straight into his own funeral. He tried his best to play the role of perfect boyfriend, but his whole world collapsed the moment Ishihara looked him in the eyes and told him she was done. The next morning, Watari showed up to school looking like a man whose soul had been repossessed. It was painfully obvious to everyone that Ishihara had dumped him, and Bro couldn't even hear her name without speedrunning to the toilet to ugly cry. Meanwhile, Tachibana spotted Ishihara playing the lonely girl in an empty classroom and slid her a tissue. Ishihara couldn't believe that out of all the people in the world, Tachibana was the one wiping her tears right now. She felt genuinely terrible about the breakup, especially since Watari had firmly shut down Tachibana's advances for her sake. But she admitted that the insecurity had been eating her alive, and ending things felt like the only way to breathe again. However, when Tokui texted her later, asking about the breakup, she flatly denied everything, claiming they were still very much together. Tachibana, on the other hand, was practically floating on air, already wondering if Watari's answer would be different now that he was back on the market. A few days later, Watari was minding his business on the school grounds when he ran into Ishihara and her friends. What threw him completely off was how normally she greeted him, like she hadn't ended things just days ago, and Bro's brain immediately started running 1,000 tabs trying to process this. Later, Tachibana ambushed him in a full spicy ghost costume, melons on complete display, straight up offering to let him crack her open if he was that desperate. After school, Tokui tracked down Ishihara to call out her lies, but she stonewalled him with a straight face and denied the breakup ever happened. Tokui then told her about the cultural festival legend, where apparently if two people kissed at the afterparty, they were basically sealed together for life, no matter who tried to get in the way. Something switched in Ishihara's eyes when she heard this, and she quietly decided she would shoot her shot with Watari right after the festival, just to see if the universe was on her side. Meanwhile, Watari's day got worse when he overheard people gossiping that Ishihara had a thing for Tokui. His ego didn't. Just shatter. It turned to dust. He started genuinely considering whether his four-eyed bestie was simply the better option for her, given that Tokui apparently had heartthrob credentials that Watari didn't know about. As the school kicked into festival prep mode, Watari was completely useless, with his brain fully occupied by the women running laps in his head. Overwhelmed, he went looking for Tachibana and found himself seriously entertaining her offer for the first time. But right before he could open his mouth, Ishihara and Tokui walked into the building together, killing the moment entirely. Seeing them side by side only cemented the rumors in his mind, and he quietly used it as the push he needed to close the chapter on Ishihara. Later, he made his way to Tachibana's place, where she wasted no time shooting her shot again, melons front and center, playing every card she had. And this time, Bro folded. One moment later, the two of them were in a dark room, on top of each other, finally at the point of plot development. But Tachibana hit the brakes immediately, informing him that his pits were absolutely not passing the vibe check and sent him straight to the bath. In the bath, Watari confessed that he wasn't the type to jump into things and would only go all the way after they had actually been together properly. Tachibana, impressed that he still had standards despite everything, gave him a deadline: ask her out before the cultural festival, and she would seal the deal permanently. A couple of weeks later, the festival was going full send, and Tokui was busy giving Suzu the lowdown on some old legend, while she sat there genuinely baffled that grown adults were out here believing this stuff. Meanwhile, Ishihara had just clocked out of her shift and was already mentally planning her wedding with Watari, picking out curtains and naming kids before she had even asked the guy out. Her friends then asked her what was brewing between her and Tokui, and that was when she finally let it slip that the one making her heart do backflips was Watari. Unfortunately for her, Bro was standing close enough to catch every single word. Later, when Ishihara finally tracked him down outside, a stampede of unhinged fans ambushed her, all desperate to snap a photo with their favorite girl. Watari pulled a quick one and dragged her into an alleyway, where they threw on some mascot costumes to disappear into the crowd. However, being that close to him in a fuzzy costume was apparently too much for Ishihara to handle, because she leaned in and planted one on him right through the mask. The psycho fans found them anyway and proceeded to use Watari as a punching bag until Bro folded like a lawn chair. Tachibana showed up though, and one look from her was enough to scatter the entire crowd. She hauled him off to the nurse's office while Ishihara watched from a distance, looking like she had just bitten into a lemon. When Watari came to, Tachibana was leaning over him, dressed in a zombie nurse outfit that was doing absolutely nothing to help him think straight. She skipped the small talk entirely and told him to just ask her out already so they could fast-track past the romantic detours and get to the good stuff. But bro was out here carrying the weight of 2 confessions on his chest and told her he couldn't, since his heart was apparently big enough to be equally confused about both of them. He even announced that he planned to turn Ishihara down too, because choosing one would be unfair to the other. Tachibana listened to this whole noble speech, decided she had heard enough, and kissed him on the mouth, betting everything on that after-party legend to sort things out whether he cooperated or not. That evening, he went ahead and rejected Ishihara, who bolted out of there heartbroken. For the next 3 days, she barricaded herself at home and acted like civilization had collapsed. A few days later, on her walk home, she finally opened up to Takue, admitting that the part that gutted her the most was hearing Watari say he also had feelings for Tachibana, which had been her biggest fear from the very beginning. That same night, Watari got home only for Tamayo to drop some news on him that his childhood home was about to be demolished, and there was a laptop inside he needed to grab before it was gone. Watari was not exactly thrilled about going back there, since that house was ground zero for his whole history with Tachibana. But with Tamayo involved, saying no was simply not an option. Watari hops on the bus and finally pulls up to his old house, only to spot an unknown red-haired baddie leaving the place with something tucked under her arm. He tears through the whole house looking for the laptop, but the thing has completely vanished. That's when it hits him that his dad used to print out physical photographs for the family, including one of him and Tachibana, and now that he thinks about it, that parcel the redhead was carrying looked suspiciously laptop-shaped. So, bro puts on his detective shoes and sprints after her. When he finally catches up, she offers him a ride to the train station and introduces herself as Rika, the landlady's granddaughter. She also throws in an invitation to her place for tea, and Watari accepts, Loki hoping to crack the case of the mysterious parcel while he's at it. But fate decided to humble him that day, because what he thought was a stolen laptop turned out to be a packet of pastries. After he spills the whole story, Rika drops a bombshell that Tachibana had also shown up at the house earlier, looking for something on the same laptop. Watari figures she must have been hunting for their childhood photos too, but now, the bigger question is where the laptop even went. Before he can spiral, Rika drags him to the all-girls bar where she works, and just like that, bro found himself surrounded by more melons than a fruit market. But Rika wasn't about to let him enjoy himself in peace. She pulls him aside, looks him dead in the eyes, and tells him his love life is in shackles. Watari, with nowhere to run, caves in and starts ranting about how complicated everything has gotten, talking about how he can't possibly pick one girl without destroying the other. Rika listens patiently, then calls him a coward to his face and tells him he already knows which girl he likes more and is just too scared to admit it. She then drops some relationship wisdom on him that she got from his own father, and that's when Watari realized with great pain that his daddy had passed down 0 dating skills to him, like a family heirloom. On top of that, Rika mentions that his father used to email Tamayo regularly, which shocks Watari, since he had always believed his dad cut ties with the whole family after getting married. Back in Tokyo, Tachibana has had enough. She decides to pack up and leave the city for good since Watari turned her down. Tokui gets wind of this and tries to convince Watari to go after her, but she shuts that down immediately and tells Tokui to make sure Watari never contacts her again. When Watari comes home and hears about her sudden exit, panic sets in fast. But Tokui, staying true to his word, tells him to back off by claiming he is now dating Tachibana himself. The lie lands perfectly, and for the first time, Watari fully understands how much he had been leaning on her, because now that she's gone, the emptiness hits different. 3 months roll by, and Watari attempts to patch up the waifu-less hole in his chest by getting with Umezawa. It works until a parcel from Rika shows up at his door. Inside is a flash drive, the last surviving copy of his photo with Tachibana. Bro stares at it for a while, then finally musters the courage to call the inn. Yayoi picks up and casually shatters what was left of his piece by revealing that Tachibana never came back home. Meanwhile, Tachibana has quietly set herself up in a secret dorm, far from Watari, far from her family, hoping to start completely fresh. A few days later, Watari breaks the news to Tamayo that he won't be going on the school trip, seeing as he is currently single, friendless, and running on 0 social battery. Even Tokui had been leaving him on red, ghosting him so hard that Bro started wondering if his newfound proximity to Tachibana was the reason. Then Valentine's Day rolled around, and Ishihara appeared out of nowhere, sliding him some chocolates and asking if they could be cool again. Tokui, who apparently also received chocolates from her, finally crawled out of his cave and texted Watari to meet him the next morning. When they linked up, Tokui came clean and admitted that he had 0 idea where Tachibana had disappeared to either. He also dragged Watari into agreeing to come on the school trip, promising to make sure he didn't spend the whole time standing in corners. It was also around this time that Watari realized the rumors about Tokui and Tachibana dating were complete fiction, which took a little weight off his chest. Meanwhile, Ishihara was busy unloading her entire emotional baggage on her friend Shimada, telling her that while she was fine with just being Watari's friend on the surface, what she actually wanted was to slide back into dating him. Tokui also nudged Watari to shoot his shot with Ishihara since Tachibana was no longer in the picture, but Watari said he couldn't just switch up like that. Back home, he ran into Tamayo, who had apparently undergone a full glow-up overnight. She confessed she had been planning to personally march into his school and have a word with his teachers to make sure nobody was bullying him, but relaxed when she found out he was going on the trip after all. While packing, he stumbled across an old childhood photo of him and Tachibana and just sat there wishing he'd had the chance to give it to her. On the trip, Watari and Ishihara ended up sitting next to each other, and he noticed that without the pressure of trying to be some ideal boyfriend, he was actually acting like a functional human being for once. When they arrived in Okinawa and were heading to the hotel, however, Ishihara's stomach dropped because there was Tachibana casually checking into the same hotel. Ishihara could already feel her carefully laid plans crumbling in real time. Later, Tachibana cornered Tokui in a bathroom stall and demanded answers, so he folded immediately and confessed that he had deployed some deeply unhinged stalking techniques to track down which hotel she'd be at. But it was obvious this four-eyed guy had been pulling strings the whole time. For the rest of the trip, Tachibana kept materializing wherever Watari was, but Ishihara ran serious interference, keeping him occupied and looking the other way. The guilt eventually got too heavy though, and she came clean, telling him that Tachibana had been at the same hotel this whole time. The moment those words left her mouth, Watari took off like a man possessed, sprinting through the hotel with the singular mission of finding Tachibana and finally getting the closure he'd been denied. Over the next few days, Watari wandered around the hotel like a lost soul, asking anyone with ears if they had seen Tachibana. Bro even had the audacity to sneak into the girls' rooms, forcing his boys to sit him down and attempt an emergency brain transplant. But when they realized there was no fixing him, they switched up and decided to just help him reach her so they could all move on with their lives. They cooked up an elaborate plan to keep the teacher distracted long enough for Watari to slip into Tachibana's room and finally empty his chest. Except he found her knocked out cold, sleeping like she had just finished a 12-hour shift, so he did the next best thing and left her a note, telling her he had their childhood photo and wanted to give it to her personally. The next morning, some random four-eyed nobody from Tachibana's school showed up delivering her reply. She wanted him to just send the photo through the messenger, but Watari wasn't about to surrender his only lifeline like that, so he sent the nerd back empty-handed. Then, Tokue dropped the bomb that Tachibana's school trip was ending that same day, and Bro immediately went into full meltdown mode. His solution was to disguise himself as the nerd and embed himself into Tachibana's school trip like an undercover agent with nothing to lose. Meanwhile, the actual nerd pulled Tokui aside and asked him why he was out here playing matchmaker. And Tokui, with complete honesty, said he had zero shot at bagging anyone himself, so he might as well rack up good karma helping a homie. On Watari's end, he jump-scared Tachibana half to death and dragged her all the way to a stunning sunflower field. She immediately softened when she saw it, since the field looked almost identical to one from their childhood photo, and even a dense woman could tell this man had put in effort. She then finally explained herself. The reason she had been ghosting him like he owed her money was guilt. She felt like she kept crashing into his life and wrecking whatever peace he had managed to build, so she figured the cleanest solution was to disappear entirely and let him ride off into the sunset with Ishihara. Watari, moving like a man allergic to emotional intelligence, responded by saying Ishihara only saw him as a friend. Tachibana immediately clocked him and asked if he was only standing in that field because Ishihara had rejected him. He denied it, told her he had made up his mind 3 whole months ago, and then finally got the words out, confessing that Tachibana was who he wanted, but she wasn't about to make it easy for him. She leaned in close enough to make his soul leave his body, then pulled back at the last second with a smirk, telling him to keep chasing her just a little longer. Then she made him pose in the field, snapped a cute photo, saved it on her phone, and casually handed over her number like she hadn't been dodging him for months. A whole month has rolled by since the school trip went absolutely feral, and Watari and Tachibana have been staying in touch through their phones like two people trying very hard to act normal. Bro finally mans up and makes plans to see her in person, and Tachibana shows up dressed like she was ready to make him forget his own name. Meanwhile, Ishihara is somewhere seriously reconsidering her life choices, because this is now the second time the same blonde has walked away with her imaginary boyfriend. Over at Watari's workplace, his boss drops the news that Umezawa, his co-worker, is quitting in a week over some personal drama. He goes to check on her, only to catch a smack to the face as she bolts out of her own apartment, like she owed someone money. As if that wasn't enough, he then runs into her older sister, who has somehow been fed the delusion that Watari and Umezawa are an item. Watari corners Umezawa to get answers, and the full story comes out. Her sister is trying to drag her back to their hometown, and in a moment of sheer panic, she had used Watari as her fictional boyfriend to justify staying in the city. Now that the lie has been exposed, she has no choice but to pack her bags. But before she surrenders completely, she hits Watari with the puppy eyes and begs him to spend the next day with her so she can at least leave with some good memories. The problem was that he was already supposed to be meeting Tachibana that same day. He explains the situation to her, and Tachibana waves it off and tells him to go hang out with Umezawa instead, pushing their meetup to the evening. The next morning, Watari and Umezawa's hangout is so painfully awkward, it could make a viewer physically recoil. She is pulling out every trick in the book to rizz him up, while Bro is over there trying to be polite about keeping her at arm's length. She eventually drops the full confession, undying love, and the whole package, and Watari responds with a rejection so cold it could freeze a greenhouse. Embarrassed beyond saving, Umezawa turns and sprints like she's qualifying for the Olympics, forcing Watari to chase after her. They inevitably crash into each other and end up in a heap on the ground, which somehow wraps up their weird little disaster date on a happy note. Then Bro checks his phone and realizes he is 40 minutes late to his actual date with Tachibana, so he books it. He finds her standing in the cold, waiting, and the two head up to the rooftop where they plan to share a kiss and make things official. Watari notices Tachibana's heart going absolutely insane in her chest and realizes she is just as terrified as he is. He finally leans in and Tachibana's alarm goes off. The universe has once again decided that these two are not allowed to have nice things. On their way back, Tachibana drops some actual life news on him. She wants to take over her adoptive parents' inn and is planning to transfer to a different school to study business. But when they finally reach their destination, Watari hits his limit and goes for it, grabbing Tachibana by her assets and making a full attempt at a kiss. Tachibana immediately cringes away from him, citing the security cameras as if she wasn't the same person who dive-bombed him with a kiss back in episode 1. At this point, Bro is completely cooked. Every advance has been shut down by this blonde, yet she keeps looking at him like he hung the moon. A few days before finals, Watari and his boys linked up for a study session that quickly turned into a full-on therapy circle about girl problems. Bro had zero complaints. He made plans to meet up with Tachibana once exams were done and locked in, telling himself he was going to ace everything just to impress her. After finals wrapped, everyone started having their little existential crisis about the future. Ishihara, still on her mission to spend time with Watari, invited him on a college tour with some other friends. Meanwhile, back home, Tamayo sat him down and told him to figure out which college he actually wanted to attend, and casually dropped the news that she would cover his tuition. The catch was that Watari would be handling house chores in exchange. Later that afternoon, Tachibana texted, asking if she could swing by. Watari immediately entered full boyfriend mode, tidying up the place and treating her arrival like a royal visit, offering tea, lunch, the whole 9 yards. Things were going smoothly until they found themselves alone and Tachibana asked him to kiss her. But then she spotted Ishihara's campus tour flyers lying around and got jealous, even though she was doing everything in her power to pretend she wasn't. Instead of addressing it, she climbed on top of him, clearly trying to shift the mood in a direction suitable for plot development. Watari, however, was not deceived. Bro could tell something was off, so rather than taking the bait, he pulled her into a tight hug and told her he wanted to understand what was going on in her weird little head before anything else happened. That's when Tachibana finally opened up. She told him that her adoptive brother and Yayoi were getting married and taking over the inn, which meant her entire plan of studying business in college had just been body slammed into irrelevance. She also confessed that the reason she had dodged his kiss before was that she was too scared to accept that Watari genuinely had feelings for her. Once she left, Bro sat there wondering if life would have been less complicated had he just pursued a normal girl. But of course, his heart wouldn't let him leave things messy, so he rushed over to the inn to sort things out himself. At the inn, Naozumi cleared things up immediately, telling him that the whole taking over the inn thing was never his plan and was just his emotional mother running her mouth. But then he went ahead and dropped a full lore dump on Tachibana's childhood. Turns out her biological mother was too busy running around with men to pay her daughter any attention, so Naozumi would regularly bring little Tachibana over to Watari's place just so she could feel something close to normal. Then summer ended, and she knew she wouldn't be seeing Watari for a long time, so she torched the garden because apparently that was 6-year-old Tachibana's way of processing heartbreak. On the drive home, everything finally clicked for Watari. The reason she was being so careful, so weird, so guarded about their relationship was that every meaningful connection in her life had either abandoned her or let her down. The one thing that had never done that was him, so she was holding onto it like her life depended on it. The next morning, Naozumi linked up with Tachibana and broke everything down for her, making sure she knew her dream of running the inn wasn't dead yet. A week later, the whole gang decided to pull up at Tachibana's workplace, and while they were there, Tokui quietly told her he was officially retiring from sticking his nose in other people's love lives. Meanwhile, Ishihara ran into Tachibana and immediately started word vomiting her entire chest, confessing that she had let her own feelings turn her into a menace. She admitted that Watari had rejected her multiple times, but she kept forcing herself into his life anyway, until she finally accepted the fact that Bro's eyes had been locked on Tachibana from the jump. However, Tachibana dropped her own confession too, admitting that she was scared she wasn't good enough for Watari, which was the whole reason she kept dragging her feet on making things official. A few days later, Watari made plans to see her, and was running around like a headless chicken trying to finish his work so he wouldn't be late again. But the universe had other plans, because for every task he knocked out, 3 more crawled out of nowhere to replace it, and Bro eventually crashed out completely. Then, as he dragged himself out of the building, looking like a man who had lost a fight with life, he found Tachibana outside waiting for him, as this girl had literally snuck into the school just to see him. Watari wasted 0 seconds and told her straight up that he loved her and that he was already thinking about building a future and starting a family with her. Tachibana turned redder than a fire alarm, and the two finally sealed the deal with a kiss. 6 years of slow burn finally cashed in. But bro wasn't done dropping news, because right after that romantic moment, he told her he had changed his mind about college and would be going straight into chefing after school. He also admitted that between school and work, their time together would be limited, but Tachibana was completely fine with long distance now that she fully trusted him. She then hit him with her own update, as she would be heading to college, which wouldn't exactly make things easier either. But neither of them seemed to care all that much, because for now, just being in each other's corner was more than enough. Over the next few weeks, bro and Tachibana were living their best domestic life, with Watari handling all the cooking while Tachibana managed the rest of the chores. Before moving in together, Aunt Tamayo had pulled Watari aside and told him point blank not to get reckless and start expanding his tribe at his age, which had him wanting to disappear into the floor. At work, they had him doing the most basic food prep, treating him like he hadn't passed culinary school. This stressed him out because his biggest priority was becoming independent and actually providing for Tachibana, and at this rate, he wasn't learning anything useful. Meanwhile, Tachibana was at home going full wifey mode, mopping floors, running his bath, and somehow getting drenched herself in the process. That night, when Watari got back, things in the bedroom got heated enough that Tamayo's advice started feeling less and less relevant. The next morning at school, Tachibana wasn't looking too fresh, and Abe the nerd happened to overhear her mentioning that her monthly bloodbath had skipped this cycle. Bro immediately connected the dots and declared this a national emergency, running straight to Takue with the breaking news. Takue promised to look into it. When the boys linked up with Watari later, they broke the news that Tachibana was sick, and there was a chance the family was about to gain a new member. Watari's first instinct wasn't panic about the second part, he just got worried that Tachibana was uncomfortable at home alone, so he rushed back to her. At home, Tachibana was burning up with fever, but the moment she saw Watari walk in, she saw an opportunity. She started peeling off her clothes and asked him to wipe down her sweaty, feverish body, using sickness as a weapon. While he wiped her back, Watari casually mentioned it was Tokui who had tipped him off, which got him wondering out loud why a guy like Tokui, with his looks, had never dated anyone. Tachibana said she actually knew why, as she had once accidentally seen a message on his phone. According to her, there was a girl Tokui had never gotten over, even after they broke up, and he was still carrying that weight around. A few days later, the whole squad linked up at the beach. Watari wasted no time reassuring everyone that no, they were not adding a new member to the family. Tachibana backed this up by cheerfully announcing that they would be sticking to regular makeout sessions until graduation, a statement that made both Abe and Takui immediately regret bringing it up. Later, Takui opened up to Watari about his situation. Turns out he had a year-long relationship 3 years ago with a girl named Aki, and things ended when he found out she had been hooking up with her ex the whole time. He wasn't looking for a reunion though. He just wanted closure. He wanted to know she was doing okay so he could finally move on. Naturally, reminiscing about Aki also meant reminiscing about her bubbly personality and her thick thighs. And with that image locked in his head, Tokui spent the entire day scouring the beach for her. He came up empty the whole day, but right as he was about to head back, Aki appeared, walking along the beach with her daughter. She was genuinely happy to see him after 3 years. She told him she had finally cut off the toxic ex and was now married to someone else, and she made sure to thank Tokui for being a solid partner during their year together. Seeing her happy, thriving, and clearly in a better place was exactly what Tokui needed. For the first time in 3 years, bro finally felt ready to close that chapter. Meanwhile, Ishihara had been eating well lately, landing herself a lead role in some TV series and slowly making a name for herself. Then one day, Watari clocked out from his shift only to find Shimada lurking outside like a lost puppy, begging him to go cheer up Ishihara because apparently she had been in her feelings. So the two of them headed to her place, and that's where Watari found out she had a kissing scene coming up in the show and didn't want it to be her first kiss. The whole sad girl performance was a setup though. Ishihara had cooked up this entire elaborate scheme just to lure bro to her house so she could beg him to kiss her and make her first one count for something. Watari couldn't believe she was still on this mission, so he let her down easy once again. The next morning, he and Tachibana showed up to her stepbrother's wedding, and she was visibly struggling to even say congratulations to the newlyweds without short-circuiting. Watari told her to just write her thoughts down on paper so she could calm her nerves and actually get through what she needed to say, and it worked. Later, Naozumi pulled them aside to thank them both, because apparently the whole reason he even met Yayoi in the first place was because Tachibana had gone out of her way to patch up her broken family, so bro was basically crediting them for his entire love life. That night though, things got heavy. Tachibana opened up to Yayoi about a fear she had been sitting on for a while. She was scared of marrying Watari, not because she didn't love him, but because she genuinely couldn't picture herself as a mother or being part of a family. Watari happened to overhear this, and instead of panicking or making it weird, he came through later that night, told her straight up that her fears made sense, and that he wasn't in any rush to build a white picket fence situation. He also suggested she hang back at the inn a few more days to get closer to her parents, and she agreed. Then bro quietly packed up and headed back to Tamayo's, where he actually started putting in a real effort to bond with his aunt and Suzu. During his time at the inn, Naozumi had dropped some knowledge on him. The Tachibana had always felt like an alien, because she had zero emotional connection to her own birth mother, which was probably the root of why the whole family concept terrified her. Then came the rain. When he went to pick Tachibana up from the train station that following night, the sky decided to absolutely destroy both of them, and they got completely soaked. Standing there drenched, Watari apologized for bringing up marriage and family talk so early in the relationship, then hit her with something personal. His own mother had a nightmare relationship with her family, which was why she ran away from home after getting married. Hearing that she wasn't some freak for not feeling love toward her own mother hit Tachibana differently. Watari then told her that as long as she was in the picture, whatever they built together would be enough for him. And then he admitted that this conversation had made him more nervous than the day he actually asked her out. Tachibana didn't say anything. She just pulled him into a tight hug, close enough to feel his heart going absolutely feral in his chest. A few days later, Umezawa swings by Watari's workplace, and Bro is genuinely pleased to hear that she decided to stay back and go hard at becoming a top athlete at her school. Later that same day, Shimada and Ishihara pull up to make a reservation for the wrap-up party of their TV show, and Watari asks about that kissing scene that had Ishihara looking like she was about to meet her maker. Shimada then drops the bomb that all that nervous wreck energy was just an act, since Ishihara was only supposed to kiss her pet dog. Following this, Ishihara apologizes for her desperate attempt at squeezing a kiss out of him, and even goes as far as inviting Tachibana to the party. Meanwhile, Suzu is speed-running her way to Tokui's flower shop, shaking like a washing machine on spin cycle. Then, out of nowhere, she blurts out that she has a crush on him and asks him to stay her friend until she clocks 18. Tokui could already hear the police sirens wailing from a mile away, so he quietly slid her a flower pot to take home and called it a day. Suzu happily took it straight home to plant in her garden, while Shu watched from a distance, looking like a man who had just received his diagnosis. He later confessed to his friend that he had caught feelings for Suzu and wanted to shoot his shot, but the fact that Tokui was standing in his way had completely knocked the wind out of him. Back at Watari's workplace, his coworker asked why he even chose this line of work, and Watari explained that he needed to be able to provide for his future wife. The guy wasted no time roasting him to a crisp, telling him that with his current skills and mood swings, he could barely support himself. Rather than folding, this lit a fire under Watari, and he became dead set on leveling up his cooking and officially getting his chef's license. Meanwhile, Tamayo woke up only to get jump scared by Tachibana, who had materialized in their home for lunch like she owned the place. On the other side of town, Watari was sprinting back home, terrified that Tachibana would unleash her chaos and send Tamayo packing. However, when he burst through the door, he found everyone sitting together having a peaceful dinner, with zero casualties. Later, as Tamayo was heading out for work, Watari got all emo and thanked her for everything, especially for holding things down for Suzu while he was away. But apparently, being emotionally unavailable is genetic in this family, so Tamayo simply told him point blank that she would be there for them whenever they needed her, and walked out. Meanwhile, Suzu dragged Tachibana over to show off her garden, where tall sunflowers were standing in full glory. The sight hit Tachibana differently, reminding her of the garden she had wrecked when she was younger. She apologized to Suzu on the spot, and Suzu happily accepted, even though she probably had zero memory of the whole incident. A few days later, the squad made their way to the beach for some much-needed memories. While Suzu was busy roasting herself under the sun, having caught wind of rumors that Tokui once dated a tanned woman, Watari asked Tachibana to shut her eyes. She immediately started wondering if Bro had finally decided to put a ring on it. However, she opened her eyes to find a watch sitting on her wrist instead, and she told him she actually preferred it over the ring. Then, out of nowhere, Watari went ahead and proposed that they get married sometime in the future, and Tachibana agreed without missing a beat. On the train ride home, Tachibana and Suzu settled on either side of Watari, both out cold and sleeping peacefully against him. And as Tachibana drifted deeper into sleep, she dreamed of herself and Watari back in the sunflower fields, but this time, she was finally able to reach him. The end. Do you think Watari should have ended with Ishihara instead, or he should have clapped both ways? If you enjoyed this recap, smash the like button. Also, subscribe to the channel if you're yet to for more action, plot-filled adventures. If you want another anime recap like this, watch this video right here.